A Curse of Mystralia just launched in the Steam Early Access for $20, bringing a spellcrafting roguelite set in the same universe as Mages of Mystralia, their previous game. You play as a watcher tasked with protecting the cycle of memories from an all-consuming rift. On paper, it promises high-stakes RPG combat, deep build customization, and an original, fully orchestrated soundtrack, recorded by the Budapest Scoring Orchestra. But how does it actually feel to play right now? The very first game that came to my mind while playing was Dreamscaper, an excellent straightforward roguelike with similar premise. Let's break down how Mystralia develops. The centerpiece of the game is its free-form magical canvas, featuring different elements and spell forms that allow for hundreds of combinations. However, in practice, that variety falls flat. Because enemy health pools are so high and combat relies heavily on efficiency, I ended up using mostly one primary spell with its variations and passive tweaks. Crafting other spells simply didn't bring any direct benefit or offer enough damage output to justify switching. Instead of encouraging creative experimentation, the current balance forces you into whichever single build gets the job done. While the enemy mechanics themselves are original and interesting, the actual pacing of combat is where the game struggles the most. Enemies feel like complete sponges, dragging out encounters much longer than they need to be. To make matters worse, healing is almost non-existent. Neither enemies nor the environment drop health, and very few mechanics allow for HP recovery. This forces you to play near-perfect runs constantly. On one of my runs, I was stuck at 1 HP for 5 rounds straight. I managed to survive and even defeat a boss in a fight that dragged on for nearly 3 minutes, only to get taken out by a random mob immediately after. It rewards precision, but the margin for error feels overly punishing rather than satisfying. The bosses look great visually, but their combat design feels underdeveloped. So far, boss patterns are quite simple. Usually do 2 or 3 distinct attacks before cycling back to the beginning. Because their health bars are heavily inflated, these fights become tests of endurance rather than mechanical skill. That being said, some of this bullet sponge feeling might be tied to bad weaponry or RNG during a run. But currently, boss encounters lack the dynamic escalation you'd expect from a modern ARPG. When you die, you return to the Azimuth Temple Hub to spend resources on permanent unlocks via the Lotus Progression system. There are around 30 upgrades available, like a 1% health regen per room, minor shield boosts, or up to a 5% dodge chance. The problem is that these upgrades lack impact. Even if you completely max out the entire progression tree, your overall power level and gameplay experience only feel about 20 to 30% stronger. Reaching the endgame of meta progression doesn't feel rewarding, leaving the long-term grind feeling hollow. For now, this is the way of the game saying, I'm allowing you to level up to level 99, but I won't give you much, which kinda contradicts the meaning of highest level. On a positive note, the technical execution is solid. I played the entire game with a controller, and the experience was fluid from start to finish. The controls feel smooth, responsiveness is tight, and I didn't notice a single frame drop or issue with visual clutter, even during intense encounters with multiple spells on screen. It seems I'm not the only one feeling this way. The Steam player base hasn't received this launch very warmly, and honestly, with good reason. Just hours after launch, the game sits at around 50 reviews with 65% mixed rating, which managed to bump up to 70. This clearly points out to a shared frustration from both genre veterans looking for deep mechanics and newcomers who were drawn in by an interesting premise, only to hit a wall of balance issues. Borealis Games has been transparent about using early access to gather community feedback, refine gameplay, and add new regions and bosses before full launch. The foundation is stable, and the visual and audio polish is definitely there. However, in its current state, a simple title like Dreamscaper delivers a far superior experience in mechanics, pacing, and overall command satisfaction. Unless you are a die-hard fan of the genre who loves grinding with a controller and wants to help shape development, it's best to wait for future balance patches that address enemy health pools and meta progression rewards. As soon as many of these problems are solved, the game will become something way more enjoyable to play. I may be back if they revamp some systems. This is all for now. See you next time.